Fair use and content disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by the host do not necessarily reflect that of the Psychological Association of the Philippines and its management. Furthermore, the views and opinions expressed by the guests do not necessarily reflect that of the host, the show, and the organization. Fair use is the copyright regulation that allows the limited use of copyrighted materials without acquiring permission from the right holders for comment and educational purposes. Views, articles, and images on this episode may contain copyrighted material which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner.
This is being broadcasted to the Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group's social media platforms, when available. If you have any questions for our guests, simply comment on this video and we will try to accommodate all your inquiries. Note that after this broadcast, we may no longer be able to answer your questions. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Live from the Philippines, Dr. Ver Reyes and Professor Monique Muyargas, Chairperson and Co-Chairperson of the Teaching Psychology SIG.
Ayun, happy birthday!
Ayun. Thank you, thank you.
Ayun, maraming salamat sa imbita mo sa sa inyong manyanita. May
Thank you,
online
thank
merienda
you.
tayo. So, just in case everybody doesn't know, now everybody knows, it's a birthday of our co-chair, Miss Monique Moyargas. Happy
Thank you.
birthday!
Thank
Thank
you.
you for spending this afternoon with us, no? Kasi kahit birthday mo, wala ka rin namang magagawa kasi wala ka rin namang magagawa dahil doon. Okay. Siyempre,
Okay.
dahil birthday mo, meron kaming surprise
Ano
na
na naman yan? Nakakatakot, dear.
Huhulaan mo ba kung sino? Huhulaan mo ba kung sino?
Ano
Nandiyan na ba
yan?
ka sa backstage? Charot, wala. Wala kami. wala kaming time para.
Busy tayo busy.
Oo, pero maligayang bati, tama ba? Maligayang bati sa iyo. Meron din syempre gustong bumati sa iyo, si Angelina Villanueva.
Ikaw segue mo
Si Judith Zapanta.
Thank
Ayan,
you.
maraming salamat. Si Dennis Bayeng.
Wow.
Ayan, maraming salamat. Kay Jmar Garcia, hello daw. Happy birthday, Ma'am
Thank
Monique.
you.
I think may bumati pa kanina. Ayan, your millennial psychologist. Si Rian, happy birthday.
Hello, Lodi. Salamat.
Si Ma'am Flo yata
Thank you, Ma'am Flo. Thank you sa panonood always.
Ayan, maraming salamat. So, may pabanderitas pa kami, di ba?
I know. It's so festive, di ba?
I know. At dahil dyan, special yung episode natin this afternoon. Oo, hindi lang dahil birthday mo. Hindi. Lahat ng episodes, ng webisodes natin ay
special.
Oo, yes. Special. Pero it's extra special because it's your birthday today. And I know, gustong-gusto mong pag-usapan yung ating topic for this afternoon.
Totoo.
Oo, favorite mo to, ang alam ko Hindi mo.
Ikaw
Ito, favorite. Sige. So, dahil birthday mo naman, okay, birthday mo naman, introduce na natin yung special guest natin dahil birthday mo. Sige.
Sige. Okay. This is a very special webisode kasi sabi nga, birthday ko at we will celebrate together with assessment psychology, di ba? And we are very happy to have with us our two special speakers, di ba? Our first speaker this afternoon teaches in the University of St. LaSalle, Bacolod City. She is a psychologist, a private practitioner in clinical assessment and psychotherapy. She is a consultant psychologist in Corazon Loxing Montalibano Memorial Regional Hospital and currently the co-chair of the assessment division of the Psychological Association of the Philippines. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Abigaile Rosemary Capay.
Yay! Happy birthday! Nawala yung pa-sounds ko dahil doon. Okay, babalik natin. Wait lang. And in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Ayan.
Okay.
Hello. Happy birthday, Miss Monique. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Abby, for joining our manyanita. Siguro pwede na natin munang tanggalin yung ating mga sa regular programming natin. Thank you, Direk, dahil sa nagagawa natin. How are you, Abby? It's nice to see you.
I'm good.
You're in Bacolod now, Abby?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
I'm in Bacolod.
Parang a boat ride away from where I am.
Oo. A plane ride away from where I am. A boat, a tricycle.
Parehas lang one ride.
Away from my place. Okay, sige. So, Abby, can you tell us more about the psychology, the assessment psychology division? Who heads this? How can they contact you? Maybe later on we'll flash na lang then your
the details.
Okay. So the PAP Assessment Division's chair is Ma'am Mayat La Peña, and the co-chairs are Ms. Florabel Suarez, who's also from Iloilo, and yours truly. So we also have a Facebook page. It's called PAP Assessment Division, and For any emails or inquiry, you can email at pap.assessment.dev@gmail.com.
Right. Sige, later
Okay.
i-flash natin yan. So, I heard, Abby, dahil manyanita to, meron ka din invite na special guest din, to
Yes.
help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
Ako
you want to
mag-invite.
introduce her? Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So, our other guest for today is a professor at University of the Philippines, Diliman, and she's also a psychologist, and she teaches assessment psychology as well as other subjects. So, please welcome Miss Mary Rose Morales. We fondly call her Yacht.
Yay! Okay.
Hello, Miss Yot.
Happy
Hi,
birthday, Miss
Yot.
Monique.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for gracing my celebration.
Yes, thank you for this
Thank
manyanita.
you for inviting us.
Our our online manyanita. Nakakaloka yung meron talaga.
Akala ko yung
Online.
birthday song, yung talagang every episode na welcome.
Yes.
Nagkataon lang. Yun.
So kung meron mang bumabate or sa mga nagsa-celebrate ang birthday nila ngayon, happy birthday sa anniversary. So anniversary, let's special occasion. Congratulations at we hope that you have a longer anniversary and more birthdays to come. Wala tayong ma-adlib ngayong afternoon. Pero
Oo.
siguro tanungin natin while we're also waiting for other people to come in. Siguro tanungin natin si Abby and si Yot, ano yung mga naging experience nila or ano yung hesitation nila now that we are papunta na tayo sa new normal of teaching online, or if they had experience before, ano ba yung kanilang mga na-experience? Siguro I'll begin with Abby. Abby, ano ba yung experience mo nitong nakaraang SEM?
Actually, very recent experience during March. So I was actually teaching psychological assessment for the graduate school, and we do it in a modular way, like 6 weeks of 8-hour classes. We meet directly for 6 weeks. So for the first 3 weeks, we were still meeting face to face. So they were able to experience, the usual way that we teach like assessment, which is, to become test takers. They take the test, they become familiar with the test, they get to experience, seeing the manual and doing the hand scoring and learning the interpretation. And then suddenly, on the third week, parang medyo nagkaroon na ng mga news about COVID, but then hindi pa naman quarantine. So parang we had like one workshop on how to use Zoom application just in case we have to cut classes. And then we were expecting to cut classes by end of March. But then nag-announce na we have to cut classes. So right away we had to transition, and the last 3 meetings were done online. And at that time I wasn't really ready, but we have to make adjustments, and then we have to do what we can in order to deliver the rest of the topics, or in order to do the other activities that we were scheduled to do. And so far, okay naman. I asked for feedback and evaluation. There's a lot of room for improvement, pero kaya naman, nagawa naman.
Okay. How about Yot? What was your experience naman? I know that UP Diliman parang cut short the SEM. Am I correct? Or,
Yeah.
So, how was the experience, or what are your parang concerns ngayon na parating yung new normal, the new way of teaching?
Oo. Yung psychological assessment sa UP, hindi siya magkahiwalay na subject. Ibig sabihin yung psychological test construction tsaka yung psychological assessment, magkasama sila sa isang subject. So ang diskarte ko noon, yung first half ng semester ay para sa test construction, and then yung second half para dun sa assessment. So nung nangyari yung suspension of classes, ang natapos lang namin noon yung test construction part. Naging open ako dun sa class ko na sinabi ko sa kanila nalulungkot ako kasi kaya ako pumasok ng psych dahil psychological assessment, at hindi ko man lang yon iparating sa inyo. So,
Oh.
ang nangyari na lang is binigay ko na lang sa kanila yung slides and then sabi ko, mag-open ako ng Facebook group para sa atin. Tapos, try natin na doon pag-usapan ng psychological assessment. So, ayun, nag-open ako ng Facebook group, private group yon para dun sa mga current students ko. Tapos doon ako naglalagay ng mga discussion questions. And then, doon nga lumalabas yung mga issue noon, yung time na yon yung dun sa military na namatay or pinatay doon sa may Mandaluyong, kay Corporal Ragos. So, yun, pinag-usapan namin noon paano kaya makakatulong ang assessment doon or etc. So, yun, mga ganong discussion questions lang yung kaya namin gawin with a Facebook group. So, looking back at that experience, sayang nga kasi ang dami sana kong nakwento, mga experiences ko as a practitioner, and then mas nagamit ko siguro ang aking charm and ang aking personality para i-convince sila to do assessment. Kasi, well, para sa akin, masaya talaga siyang trabaho. So, yun, nasayangan lang talaga ako doon sa na naputol yung class.
Correct. So I think a lot of our viewers could resonate with that particular sentiment, no, na ang sayang nung oras, ang sayang nung panahon, or these are our discipline, ito yung mga gusto nating gawin at palagay natin na dapat matutunan ng mga students. At the same time, I also like the idea of blending in social issues, social-political issues in relation to how we do our work. So parang hindi natin nahihiwalay yung ginagawa natin as psychologists on how things are happening or unfolding in society right now. No? Sige. So magandang pag-usapan natin yan. Medyo challenging tong webisode natin because ito ay isang required subject ng CHED.
Yes.
Isang board exam subject. Hello, PRC, baka naman, di ba?
Hello, PRC.
Baka naman, oo, kasi alam naman natin na medyo, hindi ko naman pwedeng sabihin unfair, no? But we are under a different circumstance. The environment is not the same as what it has been used to, and therefore the training as well, no? Medyo challenging yon, especially what we have right now. So, sige, baka may questions ka pa, Monique, while I excuse myself.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will set up the PowerPoint.
Yes,
okay, sure. So, I think Miss Abby will be the first speaker. Tama ba? Okay. So, habang sineset up ni Ver, tanong ko lang, bakit ba always, or hindi naman always, parang may misconception na napakahirap ng assessment, psychology, as a course? So, tumatawa na si Miss Yato. Bakit ba ang hirap?
Sige, can I go
Bakit
first?
ba? Yeah, sure.
Oo. Naalala ko kasi every time, first day of classes, part ng introduction yon na tinatanong ko sa mga students kasi tinitake nila to usually third year or fourth year na sila.
Yes. Oh.
Tinatanong ko sila, ano ba yung mga narinig ninyo tungkol dito sa subject na to? Tapos, lagi nilang sinasabi, mahirap, kailangan mo ng maraming tao kasi nga test construction, kailangan ng maraming sasagot. Tapos, may isang hindi ko makakalimutan na nag-describe ng course as statistics on steroids. So yun yung una nilang naalala kapag psychological measurement and assessment. So hala, ayan na naman yung stat, ayan na naman yung ano ba yan, paano ba
numbers yun.
Oo. Kaya siguro sila parang intimidated na at the beginning pa lang. So nagiging part tuloy yun ng trabaho ko as their instructor na parang medyo himasin sila at sabihin na hindi naman siya ganun kahirap, hindi naman tutulungan ko naman kayo, etc. So yun.
Okay, how about Miss Abby? Bakit nakakatakot or intimidating ang assessment?
Bakit ba nakakatakot or intimidating? Siguro because there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Like for example, di ba, magte-test construction ka, and then you'll also have to learn all about how to administer, score, interpret various tests. So parang it seems so taxing to
Mhm.
do, but then it's really the bulk of the work of most psychometricians. So it's very
Mhm.
important to learn psych assessment. Siguro, another thing that we can do para mabenta yung psych assessment is to really explain what is the purpose of it. And
Mhm.
as you
Mhm.
can see later on, it's actually marami siyang applications in different
Mhm.
settings. And if there is a reason or a purpose for why you're doing it, then maybe you would appreciate more as opposed to, just doing it, doing everything daw ka mechanically or
Yes, yes.
technically, ganyan.
True. Tsaka it's very skill heavy, 'di ba? Kailangan
Yes,
talagang
yes.
i-harness
Yeah.
yung skill, and then it encompasses a lot of fields of psychology
Yeah.
like cognitive
Mm-mm.
psychology, personality. So, yun yung
Yes.
challenge kasi dapat talagang hanas na hanas ka as a
Mm-mm.
teacher or instructor ng course na to. So,
Mm-mm.
we'll begin with Abby, Miss Abby. Okay?
Okay.
You can start off your discussion. Good luck.
All right. So, again, thank you, Ms. Monique and Doc Bear, for having us here in your talk show and Teaching Psychology Special Interest Group. So, today we're going to be talking about teaching psychological assessment in the time of COVID. So, I will first show you the flow of our discussion. So, we'll start with the challenges. What are the different challenges of teaching psychological assessment online or in a flexible learning format. Not only I'm sure that most teachers all are in this dilemma right now. Na lahat tayo we have to migrate and we all have to learn new things. So we'll start with the challenges first. Teaching in an online setting in general. And then we'll talk about those that are very specific to assessment psychology or to psychological assessment. And then later on, Ms. Yacht will cover what do we think are the non-negotiable topics that should be covered. Um, and also, we will end with tips and tricks or some suggested activities on how we can do this or some suggestions what can we do right now na iba na yung magiging mode of teaching. Okay, so in the next slide, yeah, as I mentioned, challenges in teaching assessment in a virtual or distant learning platform. So I want to start first with the need to develop technological skills, but not really technological skills alone. Technological skills, and later on I'll elaborate about what more skills ang nire-require na ma-develop. So the biggest challenge of every teacher at present is how do I translate my lessons in number one, in a flexible distant learning format, especially for students with limited access to the internet or with intermittent connection. Um, Not everybody has an access to the internet, but it also doesn't mean that there should be students who would be left behind. So for example, in the university that I teach, we are now the whole month and even during May and June, we were already preparing to converting our courses. How do we convert this if the student would have like zero connectivity,
Mhm.
and how do we convert it also, like how do I migrate to a learning management system for students in a virtual learning format? Kasi for example, for some of us who've been teaching for a long time, medyo parang gamay na natin or sanay na natin ituro yung particular course because we have been teaching it for a number of semesters or for a number of years. But now, it's very hard to simulate classroom teaching to paano ba natin talaga to gagawin, 'di ba? So parang that's the biggest challenge, I think. And we all know that we are not all digital natives,
Yeah.
some, especially for those who are more experienced or more seasoned teachers na hindi naman ganun ka into technology, it's another hurdle na parang hindi na kailangan i-hurdle na yung the technological aspect. So flexibility, I think, and a growth mindset is a must for both the teacher and students because you have to be very open-minded to to transition or to be resilient enough to take on this challenge. So in the next slide, you will see proposed propose solutions. How do I tackle this challenge? So there are two things. Number one is I need to revisit my content. So we have to ask ourselves first, what is it really that we want our students to learn in this class? So we have to review our course outcomes. Na parang by the end of this class, what are these things or what are these skills that the students must possess? What are the knowledge that they should already have? What are the competencies that they can demonstrate at the end of it all? So we review the content of our course, and we identify also ano ba yung learning objectives natin. In each topic that we decide we will cover, what are the specific objectives? And can these objectives be addressed using the format that I'm going to use? Like if I'm going to do online teaching, or if I'm going to do a distant learning, which is yung modular or ang walang, ano, for example, very limited access to the internet. And then, of course, we have to choose which specific topics do I include. In my experience, I also experienced teaching during the summer. It's not really psych assessment, it's a general education course, understanding the self, actually. So,
Okay.
parang in the classroom, I noticed that there were more topics covered, or parang yeah, more or the mas mabilis yung pacing.
Mhm.
Um, but in an online format, parang I have to choose which particular topics do I have to, yung parang very, very important na ma-elaborate. And then designing learning activities for them to really understand or for them to
Mhm.
meet the objectives of that particular topic. So baka may mga things that might not be covered. Uh, but of course, as a teacher, we try our best to cover everything. So going
Mhm.
back to assessment, we have to make sure that the topics that we will include are those that are also aligned with the table of specification. Since Doctor mentioned earlier, this is a board exam subject that has the biggest weight.
Mhm.
So we have to really make sure that all those things specified in the table of specification translates to course outcomes or learning objectives of this particular class. Okay, so that's the number one, yung content. And then the number two is the process or what particular mode we will be using. So I need to be trained on technology or various platforms. So it's very, very important to be trained or to be familiar on the learning management system to be used. So most universities and colleges right now, there's a wide variety of LMS to choose from, and you really have to be familiar with it. If I may share, I mentioned earlier about yung instant transition that I experienced during the second semester because I think it was around March, mid-March to
Mhm.
mid April yung nagturo ako. So what I did there was we already had a Facebook group where we post announcements and we post
Mhm.
some of the reports and some of my slides. Apart from the Facebook group, I also experimented with Google Classroom, and that became our avenue where I asked them to submit their assignments. And that is also
Okay.
where I posted our final exam. That's where they posted their final exam. The main learning evidence or the main requirement for that class is a psych evaluation report. That is also
Mhm.
where they submitted it. So I used the Google Classroom for that, but I wasn't really able to utilize it for other like discussion threads. Kasi at the
Uh-huh.
time, first time ko lang siya ma-meet, si Google Classroom. First time ko lang maging familiar with it. So ginamit ko lang talaga siya for submission. And then we also had synchronous discussions over Zoom na app. So that is
Mm.
where we did the discussion, like for there were still psychological tests that we were finishing or covering, and that is where we did our question and answer, discussion points, and so on. So it's a combination of Facebook, Zoom, and Google Classroom. Okay. So number two is yun nga for the I need to be trained in technology. learn how to create our own short lecture videos. I think personally this is very challenging because when during the summer, we asked students for a lot of feedback because it's the parang trial run of
Yeah.
this new normal online learning format. And one of the most common comments is, I hope na parang I wish there's more explanation. I wish there's more explanation from my teacher. And
Okay.
sometimes we do that during the synchronous part. But then not all students can connect,
Mm-hmm.
'di ba? So, if there are videos, like anytime they can, it's there, and if they
Yeah.
go to maybe their neighbor's house or relative's house,
Yeah.
they can listen to
Mm.
the video explanation. And I think it's very, very important, especially when we discuss things like, for example, mga computation part,
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I think very important na may lecture videos. And in terms of lecture videos, it is advisable to limit it to not more than 7 minutes. Like ideally, short
Ideally, seven
lecture, five
minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
Mm. Because if it's too long, then ganun din. Parang sa classroom, the attention
Mm-hmm.
span of students can, di ba, wane and they might not be listening. So at least
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes captured mo yung
Yes.
attention nila for that long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, of course, practice using the online platforms. Initially, during the summer, parang like first time to use it, and then we don't really have time to practice it. So there would be glitches that you would experience. Of course, adjust lang, and hopefully everyone is open-minded naman and can understand that everyone is transitioning. But if there's time, kung kaya pa naman na like be familiar with it first before you use it, then that would also be advisable. Even, for example, in yung sa mga telehealth, like telecounseling practice, diba, they would always say na,
Yeah.
be familiar first with your platform before you
Yeah.
start using it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we now go to the next challenge. The next challenge, or I think the biggest challenge in teaching psychological assessment, is the lack of access to normed reference tests in the campus. So when I was a psychology student and even as a teacher, we usually teach familiarity with psychological tests by letting them become test takers, di ba? They first take the different, like, so they get to experience how is it like to take IQ tests, how is it like to take projective tests before they are the ones to administer score and interpret it. So a vital part of learning psych assessment is to physically experience how is it like to take IQ tests being a test taker, meaning like the client or the one who is answering, and also a test user. So a test user is the test administrator. Okay. Now that we cannot do this, because the students are not going to campus, a big part of how psychological assessment was done before is going to change. So now, what activities can replace practical exercises of administration, scoring, and interpretation of tests? How do I simulate this in a virtual platform? um, in our university, so there is psychological assessment 1 and 2 that is being taught during the third year as well. So in initially or previously, prior to the school year, in psychological assessment 1, the main learning evidence is to be able to administer the psych test, like to proctor a psych test. That is like the main project. And then the psych assessment 2, the main project is the test construction. But now,
Mm-hmm.
talk to the teachers who are going to teach the psychological assessment 1 and 2 for undergrad, and a suggestion or a compromise that we have agreed on is to what do you call this? Pagpalitin na lang. Na parang, okay, in psych assessment
Mm,
1 will
okay.
be measurement because they can do test construction, they can learn it, they can simulate it, even in an online format. But the
Mm-hmm.
administration, they can't do it. So if we delay that for second sem, and let's see kung ano ng condition by then, because here
Mm-hmm.
in Bacolod, not much cases naman. I think MGCQ na ang status ng province
Mhm.
and ng city. So actually, students can really go out of their house and go to the campus. Pero we are just, we are just like hindi lang namin in-encourage for them to go. But maybe in
Mhm.
the future, baka pwedeng like they don't go all at the same time. Maybe
Yes.
some can go one class, like only 10 at a time in
Mhm.
one classroom. And then the next meeting, the other 10, and then the other
Yes.
10. Para at least
Puwede,
social
puwede.
distancing pa din. Baka
Yeah.
pwede naman yun. Kung hindi talaga siya
Mhm.
kaya i-simulate in a virtual platform, maybe there are other compromise that can be done.
Mhm.
So another point that can be highlighted is maybe we can also teach them the common structure of a test manual and how to navigate once it's possible. Because the yung psych test, very similar naman siya, that it starts
Mhm.
with a general description, what this test is all about,
Yeah.
guidelines for administration, who directions for administration, who are this test for, scoring and
Mhm.
interpretation, then the appendices at the back. So if usually a student or a psych graduate will notice that, especially kapag andyan na sila sa field and they become acquainted and they are familiar with the different psychological tests.
Mhm.
So let's now move on to the third challenge. So the third challenge is the possibility of deviating from standard procedures. So to all our viewers, I'm not sure if you were able to see the webinar of Doc Karing and Doc Boboy. They gave a webinar on tele-assessment way back in May.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
part of these things are some of the things that they covered. Um, like, for example, if you deviate from standard procedures, such as using an audio and video conference to administer tests,
Mm.
example, like flashing the figural item stimuli through video camera and then letting
Yeah.
them respond, then it's actually possible to be done,
Mhm.
or
So this
administering.
is synchronous, dapat real
Yeah,
time, right?
synchronous siya
Yeah.
dapat,
Mhm.
oo. So,
Yeah.
administering verbal IQ test only kasi parang hindi mo naman mapapadala, for example, yung mga blocks dun sa client mo or yung mga other test na kailangan dun nila sagutan mismo sa scoring sheet. So, another can be like the test taker's work can be scanned and sent to the psychologist or the student in training if they are, doing draw a person test or house 3-person test. So these are some deviations from standard procedures that can be done. However, another challenge is what are the risks of deviating to the procedure? So the number one risk, of course, is the test security concerns because
Mm.
as we know, psychological test should be kept very securely, hindi siya dapat ma-access ng iba. Then
Mhm.
we hear of the dangers of using certain applications or 'di ba
Yes.
everything over the internet, hindi naman natin talaga ma-assure kung gaano siya ka-private or
Mhm.
safe.
Mhm.
And then of course, since these are synchronous activities, what about for those na unstable yung connection? Okay. So
Mhm.
for example, if I am the teacher and then I can go to our testing, like the guidance and evaluation center is where we keep the
Mhm.
psychological test. If I can go there, I can access the test and I can have a video call with them and then like do a simulation.
Yeah.
Um, meron pa din siyang mga challenges. Like,
Mhm.
pwede mo siyang gawin. But then, this is also a good teaching moment because we can teach also our students, because what we teach in psychological assessment is that you have to follow standard operating procedures. You have
Yes.
to be verbatim when you give the
Yes.
administration. So now, it can also be a teaching discussion point to critically evaluate what are your own views and deviating from the standard
Mhm.
operating procedures. So we move on to the next challenge. Okay. So still in relation to the previous two slides, yun nga, yung we cannot access the test on campus and also the test security concern. Another challenge is yun nga, making sure that everything is done ethically, because this is also what Yot we will talk about this later on. Ethics is a non-negotiable topic to be covered. So very, very
Oh,
important na
okay.
matutunan. Hindi lang matutunan yung ethics, pero like how is it applied? Because in reality, when you talk about ethics, it's not always black and white. There would be a lot of
Mhm,
gray
mhm,
areas. How
mhm.
do we teach ethics in psych assessment? So, diba, as I have mentioned earlier, yung sa test security, if the tests are like hindi mo naman pwedeng picturean yung
Yes.
scoring key
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
send it for them to print it, ganyan, because
Mhm.
it already doesn't follow the ethical procedure na
Yes.
have to use the original test form, 'di ba?
Mhm.
So that's one. And then, of course, assessment by unqualified persons, ensuring that the test protocols, interpretation, and other records are kept secure. So, meaning only the test users, so the qualified personnel who are licensed, are
Mhm.
allowed to access the manual. And of course, the students can, as long as they are being supervised by their
Yes.
teacher and it's for educational purpose. Okay.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we have to make sure that the tests that we will be using are standardized, that they are valid and reliable, and that it has an appropriate normative data and appropriate to the language and competence and other characteristics of the test taker. So how do we address this challenge? So we can teach them the ethical guidelines of assessment through the use of actual applications in various scenarios. So can we can give them like case studies or like short situational scenarios, and then para
Okay.
ma-apply nila, na-gets ba nila what does this ethical guidelines mean? How does this translate to actual scenarios? Okay. And I think the last challenge that that we will cover is the issues of electronic psychological tests. So here in the Philippines, we are still very much paper and pencil, 'di ba? Most of the tests that we use are still paper and pencil format, printed manual, scoring sheets, and what do you call this? Hand scoring, and then interpreting using the manual. In reality, there is already electronic versions of psychological tests. But then, the schools have already invested in the paper and pencil versions, diba? So,
Okay. Yeah. Oo.
another thing that we can really use or explore is the use of electronic psychological tests. Okay. So, however, the issues or challenges in relation to it are number one, not enough research has explored the equivalence of some forms of computerized versions of paper and pencil tests. So, even if they
Mhm.
exist,
Mhm.
maybe hindi pa naman natin talaga alam how accurate
Mhm.
or how reliable they are.
Mhm.
And then the second one is that these tests that have been developed in research in a proctored setting are now sometimes being used in an unproctored context. So if
Okay.
you think about it, 'di ba, sa mga ibang industrial setting, their
Mhm.
testing is done fully online na. Like they
Yes.
don't have paper and pencils
Mm-mm.
anymore, pero yung kunwari, yung IQ test, personality test, and even other skills, they're all being tested online, and they do everything on their own. They read the directions. So hindi naman siya proctored. Okay. And then the third one is the effects of both the medium and the context require additional research to ensure appropriate use of tests and assessment on the internet. Especially, lalo na siguro in the Filipino context, I
Yeah.
haven't really come across research on that. Maybe meron, pero like onti pa lang.
Mhm.
So, in order to address this limitation, we also should teach our students to be aware of these limitations and what
Mhm.
that means if they are to use it in the future. So,
Yeah.
so far, that covers the challenges.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
in the next slide, you will see that we will now move on to the non-negotiable suggested topics, which will be which will be discussed by Yot.
Okay, thank you, Miss Abby. Oh,
You
marami
are
na tayong
welcome. My
pag-isipan,
pleasure.
right? Baka ma-overwhelm ang ating viewers, ang ating teachers, no? But it's good that we are getting a heads up on these things, no? Para we can prepare on what really to plan out for the coming semester. Thank you, Miss Abby.
Okay.
Okay, take it away, Miss Yot.
Okay. So, nung dinedesign ko yung course ko for online learning or for remote learning, dalawa yung major na pinag-isipan ko. So una-una, what is feasible in remote learning? So we have to consider that our students will be at home, and then there will be limited time for them to focus on their studies because they have to do chores, they have to help out their parents, etc. And syempre, kailangan din nila magpahinga. So, tatlong magkakaibang bagay ang kailangan nilang balansehin. So,
Mhm.
saan tayo lulugar sa ganon? So, ibig sabihin
Yes.
din nito para sa atin na maging mindful din tayo sa students natin na wag natin sila i-overload. So alam natin na
Mhm.
importante yung tinuturo natin, pero at the same time, alam din natin na mas importante na buhay sila at sane sila pagkatapos nitong
True,
pandemic
true.
na 'to.
Yes.
So, ayun. So pangalawa, ayun nabanggit na nga ni Miss Abby kanina. So may mga estudyante na hindi talaga magiging maganda ang internet connection. So meron at merong mga estudyante na hindi kayang makapag-synchronous or Zoom meetings online, etc. At hindi fair para dito sa mga estudyante na 'to na maiiwan sila dahil lang hindi sila nakasama doon sa mga Zoom meetings or Google meetings.
True, true.
Tapos, yung pangatlo, yun nga, katulad nga ng nabanggit ni Miss Abby, no face-to-face administration of tests. So, yan yung three main things na kailangan pag-isipan at i-consider habang dinedesign yung course. And then, yung second one, so, naisip ko sa mga estudyante, what if, yun nga, hindi ko sila mabigyan ng hands-on experience sa pag-take ng test or sa
Mhm.
pag-navigate ng isang test manual because of security concerns, etc. So ano yung kaya kong ituro na hindi kayang ituro ng test manuals, na hindi nila kayang matutunan just by reading the test manuals?
Oh,
Kasi
okay.
may faith naman ako sa mga estudyante na once they are working already and their livelihood rests on it, sila
Mhm.
na rin mismo
Mhm.
magiging motivated na maghanap ng mga tests at magbasa at mag-aral ng mga tests. Pero
Mhm.
ano yung kumbaga added value ko nitong course na 'to, na hiwalay doon sa mababasa nila sa mga test manual. So ang
Mhm.
naisip ko na kaya kong ibigay is kailangan ko silang i-encourage na pag-isipan ng mabuti, ano ba yung nakikita nila sa mga test manual, ano ba yung strengths at weaknesses nitong mga tests na kakaharapin nila. Kasi once they graduate, once they practice as a psychometrician or as a psychologist, they will uh, they will be encountering a lot of tests, and they will
Mhm.
need to make decisions on how or on what tests they will give based
Mhm.
on certain strengths and weaknesses of those tests. And pangalawa na siguro kaya kong ibigay na hindi kayang ibigay ng mga test manual ay paano i-contextualize itong mga scores na to.
Yeah.
So alam naman natin na ang mga tao, they are not just a set of scores. They're not,
Mhm.
they should not be limited to just a set of scores. So,
Mhm.
given na halimbawa, medyo mababa ang IQ score niya, ano ang ibig sabihin nito para sa buhay nung taong to? So, pakiramdam ko, ito yung isa sa mga pinaka-importante na
Mhm.
pwede kong or gusto kong ituro sa mga estudyante na magte-take ng psychological assessment. So, dun
Mhm.
sa next slide, yun, naisip ko kasi yun nga, habang dine-design yung course, ang dami kong mga naisip na ito yung mga objectives ko, ito yung mga gusto kong mangyari dun sa mga estudyante ko. The importance of psychological assessment, unang-una, bakit nga ba siya importante, bakit siya ginagawa, kung familiar yung mga viewers natin at kayo rin doon sa replication crisis nga sa psychology na
Yeah.
medyo marami doon sa mga dating findings ng psychology ay
Mhm.
hindi nila ma-replicate.
Yeah.
May isang grupo ng assessment and measurement professionals na nagsasabi na it's because you did not measure the psychological variable correctly. So,
Mm.
isa yon sa mga importansya ng psychological assessment. You have to create good tests, you have to create good measures so that whatever uh, findings you will get, such as yung sa psychological evaluation report or sa research nyo, then mapapagkatiwalaan yan. It has to be valid. And then, I also want them to know, yun nga, how to administer psychological tests. I want them to learn how to do a psychological evaluation report. I want them to learn how to construct a good or good enough test. I want them to learn what reliability and validity is and how statistics is used in psychological measurement. Ang dami. So parang ako mismo na-overwhelm, parang ang dami kong expectations sa kanila, ang dami kong gusto nilang
Mhm.
matutunan nila. So para sa akin, it all boiled down to at the end of the course, if there is one thing I want them to take away, ano yon?
Mhm.
And I felt that for me, it was most important that they are able to evaluate tests and interpret scores wisely. So given na yan yung main thing that I want them to learn, so dun sa next slide, makikita natin kung ano yung suggested topics na pwedeng i-cover. So, doon sa evaluating tests, you cannot evaluate a test well if you don't know what psychometric properties are. So, non-negotiable yan. Kailangan merong discussion or review at least ng psychometric properties. So, kasama na dyan reliability, validity, item analysis, as well as the use of appropriate norms. And then, interpreting scores wisely, andyan yung seeing the person in the assessment data. So, alam naman natin na sa psychological assessment, hindi tayo based doon sa tests lang nila. We have to get information from a wide variety of other
Mhm.
sources such as
Mhm.
interviews and observations.
Yeah.
So, kailangan pag-usapan dyan yung iba't ibang methods of assessment. At yun nga, testing is just one of those. So, kailangan din pag-usapan ng intelligence tests as well as the strengths and limitations of intelligence tests as well as structured personality tests. So, at this point,
Mm.
focus lang doon sa structured personality test since yung nga sa RPM naman doon sa undergrad
Mhm.
na course hindi pa sila pwedeng mag-administer ng projective test. So
Yes.
hindi even in my own courses, ini-introduce ko lang sa kanila na merong ganitong kumbaga
Yes.
there is this
Mhm.
animal, but
Yeah.
I won't let you administer it
Touch the
first. I won't let
animal.
you interpret. Yes, yes, exactly. Ayun. So, katulad nga na nabanggit din ni Abby kanina, ethics is non-negotiable. Definitely, kailangan ng ethics. I always underscore to my students na you are potentially making a life or death decision for your client whenever you do
Mm.
psychological assessment. Kasi, halimbawa, nagtatrabaho ka sa HR, merong
Mhm.
mga tao na bibigyan mo ng trabaho, may mga tao na hindi mo bibigyan ng trabaho.
Yes.
Ibig
Totoo yan.
sabihin nun, kailangan maging maingat ka. Ibig
Mhm.
sabihin, kailangan nun maging ethical ka sa
Mhm.
pagbibigay ng test, sa pag-interpret ng scores nila. And
Mhm.
then, yung context of psychological assessment, this will be tricky kasi yun nga, hindi ang exercise ko dito dati, mag-interview sila ng mga practitioners within
Mhm.
the HR field or the clinical field,
Mhm.
tapos i-present nila yung findings nila sa class. That will be difficult now. But I think pwede naman siya kung siguro manggagaling sa teacher mismo, yung referral, kung sino yung pwede nilang interviewin
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
they can
To
do this by
network them,
phone.
link them to the
Oo.
right person. Yeah.
Yes, oo. Then interview them by phone or by email, etc.
Mhm.
Ayun. And then so for the next slides, yun, ipapakita ko na kung ano-ano yung mga posibleng exercises for these different topics. So for example, in reliability exercises, yan, diyan natatakot yung mga estudyante kasi may mga computation, Cronbach's alpha, ano ba ibig
Yes.
sabihin ng Cronbach's alpha, mga ganyan-ganyan. So, what we can do is that first we can work with existing data sets. So if you yourself
Mm.
are a researcher, maybe
Mhm.
you have your own data set that they can analyze. You can give to
Mhm.
them for analysis. They can compute for the internal reliability of of the scales that you have used, etc. Kung
Mhm.
wala ka namang sariling data set, you can use Google Dataset Search. So later I'll give a brief introduction to Google Dataset Search.
Mhm.
Napakagandang product ito ng Google. Hindi nila ako
Mhm.
binabayaran, pero ini-endorse ko tong
Pina-promote
Google
mo.
Data. Oo, itong Google Dataset Search kasi ang galing niya talaga. Tapos, yung free software kasi ang reliability analysis, ayoko na kasing dagdagan yung takot nila sa statistics kaya hindi ko sila pinapag-manually compute. So, nung
But they
time na
should have learned
nagtuturo,
this by now. Tama ba?
yes, they should.
Yes.
Oo. So, yun, SPSS ang gamit namin noon to compute for the Cronbach's alpha, yung internal reliability. Pero kung walang SPSS at walang access sa SPSS, we can use free software such as
Aha.
Jamovi, JASP, and R.
Yeah.
Yung R ayokong gamitin kasi coding siya at wala
Oo.
akong oras na
True.
mag-aral ng coding. So, ayun, Jamovi and JASP is very similar to
Yeah.
SPSS in terms of
SPSS.
being user-friendly, ganyan.
Mhm.
So, pwedeng gamitin ng free software para mag-analyze ng data. And then, so ngayon, what if wala silang laptop, wala silang software, paano ngayon? Ang magiging
Okay.
focus ko then would be how to make decisions. Given na ganito yung reliability coefficients na nakukuha nila in a
Mhm.
certain data set, ibig bang sabihin tatanggalin ba tong item na to? Ibig sabihin ba maganda ba tong test
Mm.
na to, etc. Kasi
Okay.
uh, I'm very pragmatic in the way that I want to teach this course. Ini-imagine ko when they become psychometricians, at least for the first 1, 2, or 3 years of being practitioners, hindi naman sila gagawa ng sarili nilang test. They will try to work with the tests that they have. So I
True.
want them to learn how to judge a test if it's good or not based first on the reliability, maganda ba yung reliability
Mhm.
niya. And kung pipiliin nga nila na gamitin itong test na to, anong klaseng evidence ng reliability yung kailangan nilang makuha. So, kailan ba
Mhm.
importante ang test retest? Kailan ba importante ang alternate form, etc. etc. So, pwede
Okay.
tayong gumawa ng worksheets, exercises, scenario exercises tungkol dyan. So, for
Mhm.
example, a test developer is making a test on IQ. Which of the following reliabilities are important? So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yon. Basically, yon, teaching them to make good decisions with
Yes.
what they have. Yon. So, in the next slide, we'll go to validity. So, in validity, uh, I'm planning to create worksheets based on journal articles. So, marami naman tayong makikita dyan na mga psychometric articles, articles describing how certain scales or tests were made. And yun, so I want them to analyze ano ba ang ginawa ng mga test developers to establish the validity of the scale. So, nag-experiment ba sila? Naghanap ba sila ng mga nag-contrast ba sila ng groups, etc. So, in the worksheet, they can identify procedures that the test developers use to gather evidence of validity. And then, based on this, how should the test scores be interpreted? So, for example, ang isang cognitive test ay vinalidate lang using let's say high school GPA. Pwede ba natin siyang
Mhm.
gamiting pang-predict ng job performance? We cannot kasi
Okay.
wala siyang validity evidence for that.
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
yung mga ganong klaseng decision making, ano
Mhm.
yung mga importanteng validity evidence na kailangan nilang hanapin. And then, evaluate the evidence provided. Is this good evidence? Face validity lang ba ang kinuha nila? Kasi kung face validity, 'di ba, yun yung weakest na kind of
Yes. Mhm.
validity. So, if face validity lang, maybe you shouldn't be using this scale or you shouldn't be using this
Mm.
test kasi it's not very valid yet. Okay,
Mhm.
and then dun sa we can also do a worksheet on designing ways to validate an instrument. So we can give them a scale. For example, a satisfaction with life scale. Paano natin ito i-validate in the current setting, in the Filipino setting?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
uh, we, we we can ask our students to come up with ways of gathering evidence for validity themselves para rin
Mhm.
nakikita natin kung naiintindihan ba nila yung konsepto ng validity at validation.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then, so the next slide is about item analysis and construction exercises. So again, this is for um, teachers who will be teaching psychological measurement. So ang naisip ko na exercise is to provide the operational definition of a construct such as yung RIF, Psychological Framework of Well-being, kasi klaro dito ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng high score at ano ba ang ibig sabihin ng low
Yung
score.
low score. Yeah.
So, we can ask them to construct items based on the framework.
Mhm.
So, given na ganito yung description ng high scorers, ano yung mga items na magpo-point towards high scores? Ano yung
Mm.
mga items na magpo-point towards low scores? And then, uh, their peers would review the items kung naiintindihan ba yung mga items, if it's really indicative of the operational definition provided, and so
Mhm.
on. So another worksheet that we can do is to provide descriptive statistics of each item, such as the means, standard deviation, skewness, and then this can also be based on your own research or yung Google dataset search. And then evaluate whether these items should be retained or removed in the final scale. So, ang gusto kong basically matutunan nila dito is to teach what constructs are and how constructs
Yes.
are transformed into test items well.
Items. Mhm.
Oo. So, yun yung for item analysis and construction. And then for the next slide, yun, ayan na tayo sa assessment, psychological assessment. So, there are several methods of assessment exercises that we can do. So, for example, in an interview, we can create an interview guide based on a reason for referral. So, yung reason for referral, pwedeng manggaling na sa teacher. Ano yung reason for referral na pwede natin mabigay? So, pwede nating gawing assignment dun sa mga estudyante na interview your classmate para makakuha kayo ng information about your classmate's strengths and weaknesses. So they can create an interview guide and then have you check the interview guide, and then they can interview the classmate kahit hindi face-to-face, kahit through email, phone, video call, etc. Pero kapag gagawin nila yan, sana may reflection question. Ano kaya yung information na hindi natin nakuha kasi
Mm.
ginawa natin yung
Mhm.
interview online. Hindi natin
Yes.
siya nagawa face to face. And then another exercise is to differentiate the type of interviews that we do for psychological assessment and the interviews that we see on TV and the interviews that we do for research. So I think that would be
Oh,
a good
yeah.
exercise for uh, differentiating ano nga ba ang nangyayari sa isang assessment interview.
Mhm.
And then for observation, ang naisip ko lang na exercise dito is to get a test online na that involves overt behavior. So yung mini mental state exam or yung pulse teen test, yun yung
Mm.
merong performance items like may kailangan silang i-drawing, may kailangan silang i-fold na paper, etc. So
Okay.
they can administer it to someone just inside their home,
Mhm.
and then write up a behavioral observations, the behavioral observations of that
Mm.
person without including the score. Kasi at this point, the
Yes.
score is not important, but their eye for
Mhm.
the behaviors of the person is more important.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for the next slide, ayan, intelligence test exercises. So ito rin yung medyo mahirap nga kasi nga walang face-to-face na administration ng tests, but they can simulate taking an IQ test. So there are certain websites online that uh, host IQ tests such as yung Open Psychometrics. Later, I'll give the link. Yung Open Psychometrics, it has a link for an IQ test. However, we have to emphasize that yung psychometric properties of these online IQ tests are questionable. So this
Yes.
exercise is really just for you to experience
To
taking
get the
an
feel
IQ
of
test.
it. Oo. Yeah.
Yes, oo. Yung may time limit, kung anong klaseng
Mhm.
mga items yung lumalabas, ganyan.
Mhm.
Tapos, maganda rin kung may reflection question na nung tinetake ninyo yung IQ test na 'to, ano yung, posibleng nakaapekto sa inyo? Naging conducive ba yung environment ninyo for you taking the IQ test, for you exerting the maximum effort that you can for the IQ test? And then looking at the IQ test that you just took, how fair is this test for the Filipino population or for a population that, for example, cannot read or write or has never taken a test their whole lives? So, in that
Okay.
sense, we're trying to teach them na ano ba ang strengths and limitations itong mga IQ tests na familiar na tayo, mga paper and pen na IQ tests.
Mhm.
And then, another is to reflect on what intelligence means for them. So, ito masayang exercise to whenever I do this in my offline classes. Kasi I have a friend who
Mhm.
is teaching physics sa
Uh-huh.
IB na International Baccalaureate Program. Basta sila
Yes.
yung mga
Uh-huh.
nag-Yale, ganyan. So, tinatanong ko yung mga estudyante ko, sino yung mas matalino? Ako na nagtuturo ng psych sa inyo o itong friend ko na nagtuturo ng physics dito sa mga high school students, ganyan. So,
Ah,
syempre, ano yung mga batang yan? Magsisip-sip yan. Syempre, ma'am, kayo, ganyan, ganyan.
uh-huh,
Pero,
uh-huh.
paano nyo nasabi? And then, I give additional examples. For example, sino yung mas matalino? Ako ba o yung jeepney driver? Ako ba o
Yes.
yung tricycle driver, etc., etc.
Mhm.
And so, I ask them to interrogate, I ask them to question, ano ba ang idea nila ng intelligence? At yung
Mhm.
idea ba nila ng intelligence ay nami-measure nitong mga IQ tests na to.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
from that, we can springboard to a new exercise on brainstorming ways to measure intelligence. So given na iba yung konsepto ninyo ng intelligence, dito sa intelligence tests na nakikita natin at ginagamit natin, ano nga ba ang mas effective na paraan para ma-measure ang intelligence? So syempre, a bonus exercise, parang callback doon sa earlier discussion on psychometric properties, how do we establish the reliability and validity of the tests that you are proposing? And then for the next one, yung structured personality test. So ang kagandahan ngayon, yun nga, marami namang mga online tests na pwedeng i-take ng mga students for free that have okay psychometric properties such as yung Big Five dun sa IPIP, International Personality Item Pool. Later,
Mhm.
I'll share the link. Yung 16PF and then the VIA Character Survey from the positive psychology
Yes.
tradition. And then they can accomplish an analysis sheet that summarizes themes across different tests. So if gusto kong matutunan nila na a person should not be limited or should not be reduced to
Reduced.
uh,
Yeah.
a set of scores, kailangan
Mhm.
makita natin yung tema ng mga sagot nila across
Mhm.
the different tests at paano ito nag interact with each other.
Mhm.
So ito lang yung ilan sa mga category na uh, ini-introduce ko sa mga estudyante ko: self-image, interpersonal skills, emotions, and coping. So what does
Mhm.
the new IPIP or the 16PF or the VIA tell us about the client's self-image, interpersonal skills, emotions, coping? So they can do this by themselves. Ibig sabihin, they can take the tests themselves and then they can accomplish the analysis sheet for themselves. So hindi naman kailangan na i-administer to others, although that can be
Mhm.
an exercise too.
Yes.
Okay? So for the next one, ayan. So ethics, ito yung pinakamasaya na part ng course ko usually kasi sobrang debate to sa loob ng classroom whenever I introduce these scenarios at kapag pinag-uusapan namin yung ethics nito mga scenarios na to. So for example, yung una, ethical ba na tumanggap tayo ng libreng kape mula sa isang kliyente na nag-offer naman dahil lang na late yung kliyente? So is that ethical or not
Mhm.
ethical? Kapag tinanggap natin, ano ba ibig sabihin? Kapag hindi natin tinanggap, ano ba ibig sabihin? Etc. etc. So pangalawa is removing any mention from the psychological evaluation report of a 16-year-old client who admitted to having intercourse with a 15-year-old partner.
Mhm.
Technically minor sila, pero
Mhm.
relevant ba 'to doon sa assessment? So, is it
Yes.
ethical na tatanggalin natin 'to? And then another is, lowering fees for indigent clients or mga walang pambayad sa atin kasi mahal ang assessment. And,
Yes.
or asking fees from hi asking for higher fees from
Fees
rich
for
clients.
expensive. Yeah.
Oo. Kasi, we can think na, I'll be the kind of a kind of Robin Hood na I'll
Mhm.
steal from the rich and then para I can give more
Yes.
service
Yeah.
to the poor. So is that ethical or not? And then kasi wala ito sa guidelines natin, sa code of ethics natin. When
Yes. Mhm.
when we contextualize it like this, it's never going to be this simple. And then the
Yes.
last one is yun nga, some continuing to assess a client whose beliefs run against yours. So for example,
Yeah.
you're very religious and then yung client mo is an atheist.
Mhm.
Tapos nararamdaman mo habang ina-assess mo, habang tinitingnan mo yung mga personality tests niya, yung mga results niya na ah naiimpluwensyahan ka na ng mga naiisip mo tungkol dito sa client na 'to. Palibhasa kasi wala siyang takot sa Diyos kaya nagagawa niya 'tong mga bagay na 'to. Is it
True.
ethical that we continue to assess when we
Mhm.
have those kinds of biases also? So,
Mhm.
these cases are put to discussion precisely because in many cases, a clear solution does not present itself
Mhm.
readily. So,
True.
maganda na napapag-usapan ito sa klase kasi yun nagkokontrahan sila, nag-aaway sila
Yeah.
na dahil
I could just imagine yung discussion ng
yes,
mga
yes.
bata.
Oo. And even when I did this doon sa Facebook group ko nga, talagang sagutan sila when we went into the ethics. So, magandang exercise 'to
Mhm.
kasi it's not so much arriving at a correct answer, but really teaching them to pause and think about the implications of their actions. Na
Mhm.
napakasimpleng bagay lang na tanggapin mo yung kape, pero anong ibig sabihin nun doon sa
Yes.
relationship ninyo.
Mhm.
Okay. So for the next one, ayan. So other activities na siguro parang, ito yung mga naiisip kong parang summation activities doon sa psychological measurement and assessment. So as a group, they can research and make a brief 1 or 2 page report about a commonly used test such as the differential aptitude test or the 16 personality factors test or the culture fair intelligence test with specific focus on its publication date. Alam natin ng mga 1960s pa yan, mga
Yes, yes. Mhm.
psychometric properties, and administration guidelines. So they can include a critique of the test. Uh, Familiar naman tayong lahat dun sa Flynn effect, especially if you are teaching assessment psychology. You're
Mhm.
familiar with the Flynn effect na tumataas ang average IQ as the years go by. So, kung
Mhm.
ang test like the CFIT has norms na 1956 pa, ano ang
Yeah.
ibig sabihin nun para doon sa validity nung
Mhm.
results na makukuha natin from that test. And then another activity is as a group, propose the creation of a scale including operational definitions, sample items, and procedures to
Mhm.
establish reliability, validity, and appropriate norms. So, iniisip ko kasi it might be easier in an offline class or in a traditional class to gather participants for this.
Mhm.
It might be a little bit more difficult for in an online setting. Pero baka
Mhm.
kaya naman na they can
Yeah.
actually create tests on their own. And
Mhm.
then finally, yun nga, individual, the psychological evaluation of the self with the referral question, how can I cope better with having online classes or how can I
Mhm.
cope better with this pandemic? So
Yeah.
I feel that this would be a good exercise for them kasi it it helps them uh, well, write a good psychological evaluation report kasi yung sarili nila yung at stake dito eh.
Mhm.
At
Yeah.
pangalawa, it becomes more relevant for them. I remember reading somewhere na one way of maintaining student engagement in an online setting is to yun nga, magpasok tayo ng mga scenarios or situations that are relevant to their current lives.
Mhm.
So this
Mhm.
is one way of doing that as well. Okay. And then, so for the next one, we'll now talk about the tips and tricks for um, that we can do for teaching psychological assessment in the time of COVID-19. So una, lobby for institutional support. Kailangan nating magsama-sama mga guys kasi mahirap ito gawin mag-isa. So sana kung kaya kayong tayong mga faculty i-lobby natin dun sa department chair natin or dun sa college dean natin na baka naman pwede magbigay ng
Mhm.
backup internet connections for faculty or students or find a way para ma-access nila itong mga bagay na ilalagay natin online. So nabanggit nga
Mhm.
kanina ni Miss Abby yung LMS, mga learning management systems, and these are
Mhm.
online. So
Yeah.
wala namang kwenta yung paghahanda natin itong mga to kung hindi rin ma-access ng mga students.
Mhm.
So if we can band together and lobby for institutional support, that would be
Mhm.
great. And then,
And at least I think they should find out baka may plans ngayon yung university nila or
oo,
college. They can
oo.
plan alongside with it on the kind of strategies they're going to use para ahead of time they would know kung anong type ang gagamitin nila.
Yes, oo. And then, yun nga, kasi baka, yun nga, like what you said, in the university, they might already have a learning
Yeah,
management system.
system. Yeah.
Moodle or Google Suite may Google
Mhm.
Classroom, ganyan. So baka pwede nilang gamitin yon. Kung sakaling wala, I think Edmodo is free
Yeah.
for teachers,
Yes.
Edmodo. And then, another is team teaching. Baka pwede naman na mag-team teach na lang kasi matrabaho talaga to. Doon sa
Mhm.
dami ng worksheets na in-enumerate ko, ang dami talagang trabaho at sa pag-check nito. So maybe we can team teach, or if not actually team teaching kasi baka sabihin ng mga college deans or department chairs mahirap yan sa pag-split ng loading, mga ganyan.
Yeah.
Ah, baka kayong mga pare-parehong tinuturo itong subject na to, you
Mhm.
can assign among yourselves na ikaw gumawa ka ng video about reliability and validity, ikaw gumawa ka ng
Mhm.
video about methods of assessment. And
Mhm.
then, itong mga videos na to, kahit magkakahiwalay tayo ng section, basta pare-pareho tayo, ito yung isi-show natin doon sa mga
Yes.
classes.
Parang
So, maybe,
departmentalized.
yes, oo.
Mm.
So maybe we can do that as well. And then finally, yun nga, reduce class size. Baka pwede naman. Kasi sa dami ng worksheet, sa dami ng mga kailangan natin checkan, parang nalulula ako kapag iniisip ko na mga 30, 40, yung ganyan na yung
True.
checkan kong ganyan. So baka pwedeng, dun sa mga department chairs, baka pwedeng 15, 20, kahit
Mhm.
maraming sections, ganyan. Basta baka pwedeng mas konti ang sa isang section. And then for the next one, early preparation is key. So, ang psychological assessment, it's a methods course and it's very, very difficult to teach remotely. Tulad nga nung nabanggit ko kanina, may mga estudyante rin na when they get to psychological measurement and assessment, meron na silang mga takot, na-intimidate na kagad sila doon sa idea ng psychological measurement and assessment. So, uh, it, it it becomes even more important na magsimula tayong mag-prepare ng maaga. And then, prepare only what students can realistically accomplish given various
Mhm.
constraints. So, I gave a lot of sample exercises and worksheets earlier. Hindi
Mhm.
ko rin balak ibigay yun lahat kasi una, kawawa yung mga estudyante at pangalawa,
Yes.
kawawa rin ako kasi ako rin yung magche-check ng mga yon. So, prepare only what students can realistically accomplish
Mhm.
given various
Mhm.
constraints. And then, as early as now, I think wala pa namang nagsa-start ng classes dito sa tertiary level.
Mhm.
So we can already spend our time preparing slides, worksheets, podcasts beforehand so that later on, upload na lang ng upload and then check na
Mhm.
lang ng check. Baka rin pwedeng kung lecturer ka at hindi paid itong additional work na 'to,
Mhm.
baka puwedeng kasama 'yun dun sa lobbying for institutional support na baka naman
Yes.
puwedeng bayaran natin yung mga lecturers for this
Mhm. May
additional
additional
preparation work.
numeration. Oo.
Oo, oo. And then, next one, 'yun. So, the internet is a friend. So, ilan 'yan sa mga, free mga websites na, naging sobrang helpful sa akin. So, halimbawa, yung JASP and yung Jamovie, those are free statistical software. So, andiyan yung
Mhm.
sites, where you can download them. And then yung Open
Yan,
Psychometrics.
they can screenshot this, Miss Yot?
Opo, sorry?
They can
Hello?
screenshot this,
Yes, they can
this.
screenshot
Yeah,
this.
okay. Yan.
Ah Yan. So, openpsychometrics.org. So, maraming mga tests dyan. May 16 PF dyan, may online IQ
Mhm.
tests dyan. And then, yung International Personality Item Pool or IPIP, list of tests and their items. So, meron din siyang free Big Five questionnaire. And then, yung Google Dataset Search. So, in the next slide, nandyan yung dataset search. So, how does it work? So,
Hmm.
ang ganda-ganda nga siyang tool ng Google kasi it makes available data sets that researchers have used for their research.
Mhm.
So for
Mhm.
example, ang kiniin ko dito is positive affect, negative affect schedule, which is a popular emotion scale.
Mhm.
Meron na siyang nilabas na research that used this scale, and then meron ding data from that research. So yung sinasabi ko kanina about using existing datasets, they can use dataset search to look for research that had used the scales that they are
Mhm.
interested in. And then they can just download this and then run na yung statistics dito. Yon.
Okay.
And then, next one. So don't lose sight of the main thing you want them to learn. So earlier, nagpakita ako ng maraming objectives na gusto kong matutunan sila, but I wanted to
Mhm.
focus on just uh, evaluating tests and interpreting scores wisely. So we might
Mhm.
be tempted to overload them with work because we want to make sure that they get their
Yes.
money's worth
Mm-mm.
and they are
Yeah.
actually learning. Pero, yun nga, quality over quantity. So
True.
manage expectations instead of 3 to 4 exercises. Baka naman pwedeng 1 or 2 lang na most effective exercises in your opinion that can
Mhm.
help them learn what you need them to learn.
Mhm.
And then finally, we can also flip the classroom. So for example, yun nga, hindi natin may iwasan talaga na mag-synchronous sessions in
Mm-mm.
a flipped classroom. So you can watch YouTube videos about this, the flipped classroom.
Mhm.
Ang nangyayari dito is students are provided with materials first, which they can self-study. And then, synchronous session can happen at the end of the week through Google Meets or through Zoom, etc. To clarify or reiterate important points or to give exercises. So,
Mhm.
as much as possible, synchronous sessions should be recorded for students without a stable access to the internet. So, katulad natin, naka-live stream tayo ngayon, pero
Yes.
available pa rin itong video na
Mhm.
to after this live stream.
Mhm.
Ayun lang po. So,
Wow.
that's where I end.
Thank you, Miss Yot. Ang galing-galing. I didn't think about assessment that way, no.
Mm-mm.
To be honest, mas na-appreciate ko yung assessment. Thank you. Thank you. Palakpakan naman.
Oh, thank you. I think what I liked about this session is parang ang dami nung topics on maganda yung sinabi on ethics, yung teach them to pause and think about the effects and implications
True.
of their actions. Parang rather than just talking about this in a very, paano ba, academic naman talaga, pero in a vacuum, parang gusto ko yung mga, kapag ganito ba, ano yung mangyayari, di ba? Parang laging merong, hindi, ano ba tawag doon? Hindi mo formative assessment eh. Pero there's a time for people to think, the students to think about their particular actions. I particularly like yung parang, yung gusto ko yung intelligence nung yung sino bang mas matalino sa amin, di ba? Kasi parang, I was at the backstage, tapos natatawa ko, oo nga, no, parang, how do people say na a person is intelligent or not? And how do they compare these intelligences? And ito yung important siguro na opportunity, no, for our students to really think about, sino ba tong mga taong to? Ano bang taong yung pinag-uusapan natin? No? Ako nagustuhan ko yun, super na-appreciate yun. Kasi parang, I taught assessment psych parang once lang yata or twice kasi ang trabaho niya talaga. Nako, I'm sure. Huwag tayong magplastikan, mga ka-viewers. Mga ka-viewers.
Yan. Mga
Pero,
viewers.
ano
Ang
talaga.
dami mo pang ika-cover, di ba?
Yes.
And then, if poor yung kanyang psych stat nung earlier years, magsasuffer ka kasi you have to like take on the burden of that, di ba?
Oo, at saka low 5-unit course, 'di ba?
Yes.
Tapos bayad lang ako katulad ng isa pang 3, 'di ba? Tapos yung trabaho ang dami. So, feeling ko dapat yung bayad dito more, parang gano'n. Kasi matrabaho siya and very important kasi siya eh. Kasi especially for BS or AD psychology, yung bachelor's degree, kasi ito yung gagawin talaga nila kaya ang laki nung I'm not, if I'm not mistaken, this is 40%. Am I
Yes,
correct?
40%. Oo.
For the board exam. I'm not
Mhm.
sure sa psychologist, ilang percent ba to?
30 yata.
35.
35.
35%.
35. So, mas konti lang ng, ng 5.
Ng 10. Ng 5 pala. Oo.
5%. So, iba din yung impact kasi nito. And the PRC is always saying, heavy talaga siya with assessment because these
Yes.
are the basic foundation talaga of the things that a psychometrician should be able to do, no? Should be able to, ano ba tawag doon? Outcome as students graduate ng kanilang psych program.
Yes.
Yun. Nagustuhan din natin yung yung, hindi ko alam yun yung mga, anong tawag dito, yung sa Google, can you tell us more how you were able to parang discover about it and what are other areas that you can, what you've been, how you've been using it in the past?
Ako, generally, doon ko pa lang siya nagagamit actually sa pagkuha ng mga data sets for exercises. Pero I can imagine na if you want to do research, you can very much use it for secondary analysis. I think kasi lurker ako sa Twitter at marami akong mga fina-follow na mga psychologists and researchers on Twitter at sila yung nag-introduce sa akin na meron ngang ganitong klaseng functionality ang Google. So, I think it's very, very helpful na yun nga, kung wala kang data set pero kailangan mo na exercises, ayan, may data set ka na agad.
Correct. At saka what I liked about what Yot said, na parang she got this information from Twitter, from social media as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's important siguro also for teachers, not just to network within the school or within the Philippines, but also to try to look at social media accounts. Especially now, no? Kasi, well, not because marami tayong oras, pero it's because we have more opportunity now to explore, no, that particular networking sites, no. Natuwa ako doon sa gano'n. Pwede pala sa Twitter, ingat-ingat lang sa mga alt accounts and stuff, no. Yun. Meron tayong comment from our YouTube, kasi wala siyang picture eh. Sabi niya, very informative and interesting webinar session. Thank you. Thank you daw sa inyo.
Thank you.
Correct. So maraming salamat. Very good speakers. Sabi ni Marie Ann Vargas, Miss Abby, and Miss Yot. Thank you daw.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat. Okay. There's a question here. Sabi ni Den, Miss Yot or Miss Abby, pwede ba mag-suggest kayo ng magandang textbook? Oh yeah, hindi natin masyadong na madaling gamitin ng undergraduate student. Hindi ko alam kung student siya. Pero baka kasi student din siya or baka mag-review siya.
Ano nga?
Yung sa undergrad, ang frequent na ginagamit is Kaplan and Sakuzo. Kaplan and Sakuzo psychological testing. Yon. Para sa akin maganda siya kasi hindi siya masyadong boring. Kasi aminin natin, yung Anastasia and Urbina na 1992, that's a very boring textbook. At ayaw na nating dagdagan yung stress ng mga estudyante na magbabasa sila ng boring textbook tapos ang hirap paintindihin. Yun, Kaplan and Sakuzo, that's a very good textbook. And then yung isa rin na na-appreciate ko was Cohen and Swerdlick na psychological testing din yata ang title, if I'm not mistaken. So, yun. Kaplan and Sakuzo or Cohen and Swerdlick, pwede siyang mga textbooks.
Okay. Ayun. Nagtuturo daw siya. Nagtuturo po.
Ayun.
Hindi naman kita ginudge.
May follow-up,
Oo. Kasi baka sabihin nyo, hindi ako student, Pero, yun, thank you for that. Sabi ni Giselle Conrado, the webisode gave me several aha moments on how to teach a subject. My sincerest thanks to our speakers for sharing suggested learning activities, enough tips, tricks, and of course, our motivation. Ayan. Meron
pa pala kung
go ahead.
Kapag, yung isa rin pala kasi, yung pambobola ko sa mga estudyante ko, syempre first day, kailangan ko silang bola-bolahin para ma-inlove sila dun sa subject, ganyan. Syempre hindi ko madadaan dun sa bola na minahal ko ang psychology dahil dito sa psychological assessment, ganyan. Hindi pa sila naniniwala at that point. So, baka pwedeng, ang ginagawa ko rin na external motivation sa kanila, sinasabi ko sa kanila, this is a skill that you can put in your resume. If your employers see that you can create psychological tests, then you have one skill that is a cut above the rest. Kasi, nabibigay ako ng example from my own experience. Kasi di ba ang doctors, meron din silang CME, Continuing Medical Experience points, mga ganon. So, hindi, basta yun, kailangan din nilang mag-points. So may CME din sila, and then merong ni-refer sa akin na isang doctor na gusto daw niyang mag-present doon sa conference nila, ganyan. Ang pinag-aaralan niya noon was breastfeeding practices of a community in Quezon City, ganyan. Tapos, tinatanong niya ako, ano ba yung reliability and validity? Paano ko ba magagawa yan doon sa scale ko? So, di pinakita ko sa kanya, ito, i-compute natin, ganyan, ganyan, ganyan. So, that meeting lasted for about 2 hours. Pero, binayaran niya ako doon ng 10,000 pesos
Ay,
for only
wow.
2 hours. Yes.
Tama
Pala,
naman.
internal motivation yon.
Mukha naman.
Tapos, oo. Ayun, kaya yun nga yung sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, kapag magaling ka dito, pwede mo siyang pagkakitaan talaga. Tapos, 'di ba,
Yun yung number one na motivation.
Oo.
kaya
Hindi
syempre
yung
naging
grades.
interested sila. So, yung pangalawa ko pang kinukuwento sa kanila. So, magkano ang psychological assessment ngayon? When I was still with Psych Consult, medyo matagal na yun. So, I don't know. It might be 9,000, 10,000 per person.
Before.
Oo, before.
Before.
Ngayon, may hamak na mas malaki na.
Double.
Oo. So, sabi ko sa kanila, imagine, kahit once a week ka lang mag-test, meron ka ng 10,000 per
May
person.
pang-grocery ka na.
May pang-grocery ka na. So,
Pambayad ng upa.
oo, 'di ba, may pang-internet ka na, may mga ganyang bagay, may pang-milk tea ka na everyday. So, ang daming 'yun, yung mga gano'ng bagay. So, at 'yun yung ginagamit ko na una na panghalina sa kanila na external, at least external man lang, bago ko sila i-guide through the exercises, na ang hope ko na lang is sana ma-appreciate din nila at makita nga nila na there's something amazing that is happening whenever we do psychological tests and whenever we do psychological assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Meron tayong comment. Thank you daw for sharing where to look for resource materials kasi hanggat YouTube lang daw siya. Ayan. So, so may Twitter ka na ngayon na pwede punta. Oo, meron na siya. Okay. Si Maria Ann Vargas daw is from
Bacolod.
Pa-shout out daw, Miss Abby.
Shout out to you, Miss Mary Ann.
Ang dami ng fans. Ganun ba yung assessment? Ang daming fans.
Okay. Sabi ni Winston Carrera, yung 5 topics na nasa CMO was compressed. So, congratulations daw to you guys. No? Again, thank you from our YouTube comments. Thank you daw for PAP. Meron din, thank you for taking time to share your expertise and experience as teachers of testing and assessment, which is quite challenging in terms of delivering this to our student. Ay, may nag-comment si our former president. Sabi niya, binubola ko rin ang mga students when I talk about stat as in it's magic.
True.
I'm sure, Doc Marge. I'm sure.
Correct. Kung meron pa kayong mga last questions before we wrap this up, you can comment down in our, ano ba tawag dyan? In the comment section in our live feed, and then we'll try to answer this. Meron ding I'm not sure if you can put your thoughts into this. Psychological Assessment and Report Writing by Goldfinger and
Pomerantz.
I'm not sure if you've come across this.
I haven't yet. Pero thank you for that suggestion. Hanapin ko nga.
Floribel yun eh.
That's right. Shout out to the Bureau of Education Assessment, DepEd. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and stay safe, you all. Yan. Sige, meron pa ba tayong siguro antay-antayin natin? Again, we don't give certificates for our webisodes just in case may magtatanong po.
Meron ng tanong, handouts sa discussion na to or webisode na to. Meron ba kayo?
Wala yata silang
You can see di ba this is recorded naman?
You can watch it over and over.
Yes. Okay. There's a question from Judith Zapanta. Question po, hi Miss Yot. ano pong preferred ng mga students sa mga exercises? By group or individual? Siguro based on your experience.
Based on my experience, individual. Kasi kapag ka-group, tapos hindi maganda yung internet ng kagrupo nila, nasa-stress silang lahat. So, yon.
Saka social loafing.
Individual na lang. Oo, social loafing. So, individual talaga.
Which is, in a way, challenging din kasi pag individual, mas
Daming
maraming
chechekan.
Maraming
Siguro
chechekan.
no, it can be both. Like maybe some of it can be by group, but the the major bulk can be individual. And
Siguro,
yes, yes.
sorry. So, siguro kung per group, baka habaan na lang yung deadline. Like 2 weeks to 3 weeks para rin kung may internet issues man, meron silang time to address that somehow. Yun.
At saka siguro, again, going back to the welfare din of teachers, you assess din also, ano ba yung capacity din ng mga bata? Kaya ba talaga nila mag-group? Going back to the challenges that we talked about, baka gusto nga nating i-group, pero a lot of them would have challenges naman interacting din, no? Through internet connection or through their devices. It would be also difficult. So, I guess, i-customize mo siya in a sense na not just their interest, but also their accessibility to devices as well.
And I think that should start sa class. And like the first thing that you have to do in class when you start on the first semester, yun talaga, you have to know the profile of your students, yung digital access nila, technological access. Para ikaw rin, you have an idea on how to play around with your materials as well.
That's right. Okay, si Julie Faltado was asking, thank you so much po, may masasuggest daw po ba kayo ng ebook on psychological assessment for our students? I think yung kila Kaplan, I'm not sure kung meron silang kasing ebook baka hard copies yun. But if ever you have.
They might be available in an ebook version.
So, dun tayo babagsak sa institutional lobbying for support. Kasi kailangan nating mag-invest din in e-books, no? Okay. Si Wen Pantoja, although wala siyang picture, sabi niya, is it okay split ang 5 units so that the test construction can have focus, which is the core side of the RPM licensure?
I'm not sure, but I think okay because that is how it's done in our university. It used to be 5 units na psych assessment, but now it's psych assessment 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Which actually it became 6 units, pero at least parang mas na lessen yung coverage ng part 1 and part 2.
Right.
I guess sa university, di ba, sa UP, right, Ms. Yot, parang pinropose nila that we can move at a later semester yung lab part para hindi siya masyadong heavy. So, di ba, 5 units yung assessment. We can split it.
Yes. Yun, kasi right now, yung psych assessment namin, yun nga, nasa isang 4-unit course lang siya. So, ako na yung, kumbaga, naglagay ng arbitrary split. So, before mid-sem, test construction, after mid-sem, assessment tayo. Pero, dito sa new curriculum namin, magkahiwalay na talaga siya na subject. Yung isang psychological assessment 1 is test construction, psychological assessment 2 is assessment talaga.
Yeah.
I think in the CMO, it says there kasi na 5 units. So it depends on siguro how your institution would like to have an additional number of units, for example. Kasi I'm not sure, but this will date me, no? Tagal ko nang graduate ng college. Ang tawag pa nga nun, psychological testing. Yung palang siya.
In our time.
Diba? Sa time natin, ganun din.
So sa 5-unit course lang siya. And it was just really about testing. Now, I know for a fact that yung iba kasi na mga core schools, yung laboratory units nila, mas maraming hours devoted. However, I'm not quite sure how that would work now because wala namang hours na tayo masyadong pinag-uusapan kung mag-online because it's going to be asynchronous. I mean, it's going to be difficult to think about how many hours and stuff. So, ako siguro suggestion ko, if you want to do that, you talk to how you construct your curriculum. Di ko kasi alam, iba-iba yung colleges and universities on how they create their programs. But that could be one. no? Although I'm not sure how that would work ngayon kasi baka masyado nang mahirapan yung, I mean, hindi na siya aabot. Yun. So, okay. Meron daw PDF versions yung kay Kaplan at kay Cohen, pati yung kay
Marnat.
Marnat.
Gross Marnat. Oo.
Oo, so yan. May question tayo from our YouTube. Sabi niya, for our MA classes, although hindi to masyadong, yung what we're talking about now are for undergrad, no? But baka you might also be able to answer. MA classes, do you have any recommendation on how to teach projective tests online? Oh, before we go there, again, we would just like to remind that projective tests are not supposed to be taught. Sabi nga ni, sino ba yun? Si Abby ba yun? Or si Yot?
Yes.
There is a different animal. Pero
Don't
kasi,
touch.
what I used to do there is pinapakita ko lang na okay, may mga projective tests, but hindi pa kasi sila as undergrad students, you're not yet ready to do this, no, as of the moment. But just to answer this, how to teach projective tests online? Do you have any recommendation?
For MA, like, maybe like what was mentioned earlier, na baka possible naman yung sa synchronous video call. For example, TAP, thematic apperception test, you can flash and then they will write their stories. And then you can give instructions, for example, draw a person, and then while they're doing it, you're observing their behaviors by a video cam. So yun dun pumapasok kanina yung if I do it, am I still going to be am I still going to be following ethical standards? Kasi may risk man yun sa security. For example, like they can screen capture the picture and then they can, diba, they can use it na hindi authorized, for example.
Okay. Sige, may shout out tayo from St. Vincent College of Cabuyao. Sorry, natakpan na yung mga tao sa Psychological Society students and faculty. Sobrang helpful ng webinar nito. True yung sabi ng mga previous students na budol-budol ko daw sila nung sinabi kong madali ang psych testing and assessment yung first day ng class. That's really magical. God bless po sa inyo. Yun. So, I think merong isang question, but I guess this is more of an ethical concern lang. Can we scan the answer sheet of tests since we do not have face-to-face?
For what purpose kaya? Hindi siguro. Ayan yung mga kaninang issues or drawbacks. Hindi pa rin siguro pwede. If we teach them that it's not allowed and then we say this time it's allowed, it might just cause a confusion. Diba? So,
So I guess
better not.
Yeah, better not. We normally don't. we should not. Yes. Tanggalin natin yung usually. We should not. Walang ganon, Mars. Ay,
Walang ganon, Mars.
Ibang episode pala yun. ng teaching. Okay, so siguro that's all the time that we have. But before we let go of Miss Yot and Miss Abby, there are some things na may ipa-plug si Monique dahil birthday niya. May ipa-plug si Monique for our next few episodes in this week.
Okay, so look forward to our next webisode, which is tomorrow. Again, it's 2 p.m. We are going to talk about positive psychology, how to teach it with Professor Neil Quintanar. And again, no registration needed. You just have to tune in. And then on the 17th, that's Friday, 2 p.m. again. We are going to talk about practicum in psychology. We have two very special guests with us, Dr. Mark Distor and Professor Jay Yakat, who will panel and talk to us about their experience. And then on July 20, we have abnormal psychology, of course, from our dear friend as well, Dr. Mark Eric Reyes, the Vice President of PAP. And then on July 23, we have experimental psychology by Professor Junix de los Santos of University of Baguio. And then on the July 24th, at 2 p.m. as well, group dynamics by your millennial psychologist, Professor Rian Portugues. And Then we have on July 25, Biological Psychology by Professor Michelle Valbuena of Silliman University. And then on July 28th, we are going to talk about Social Psychology by Professor Liwa Quiñones and Professor Darren Dumao of Social Psychology Division naman tayong partnership. And on July 29, Introduction to Psychology with Professor Pat and Professor Ryan. And last, July 31, it's going to be me. How to virtually teach psychology the OBE way. Yeah.
Yes, ang dami-dami natin
Wow.
gagawin.
Ang dami,
Wala
I would like to congratulate your division. You have been so very active in organizing all these
Oo.
very, very helpful webisodes. Congratulations.
Yes.
we couldn't do it
Congratulations.
without you. Oo,
Yes,
with people
oo.
like you who accept the invitation. Yan. Yes. Wala, hindi kami nagbibigay ng certificates. Ating mga subscribers.
Yeah, maraming salamat kasi we know that this is like 2 hours of your time that you could have spent resting, no? But you chose to spend it with our viewers, with a lot of psychology teachers, and helping them out as we go along. Walang perfect, pero we try to make it better as we move on from this particular pandemic. Miss Yot or Miss Abby, do you have any events that you would like to
Yes.
plug? Siguro.
We don't have any upcoming events. I think apart from, it was also announced in the PAP ang call for nominations for the upcoming elections, and just we will we will keep you posted for upcoming events as long as when they if we have them already, it will be posted in PAP Assessment Division Facebook page, and you can email us at pap.assessment.div@gmail.com. Thank you.
Yun.
Yeah.
Sige, Miss Yot, baka meron kang guestings, movie.
Ay, may ganun.
Naman as a
Wala naman.
Ayan.
Okay. Sige,
Wala. Good luck na lang sa ating lahat.
ayun,
Yes.
Good luck
Oo.
this semester and this school year.
Oo. Oo.
O yun. At kasama ninyo ang PAP Assessment Psychology Division sa journey na ito. No? So maraming salamat again, Miss Yot and Miss Abby. Happy birthday again, Monique.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday, Miss Monique.
Thank you. You made my birthday very meaningful.
Yay! Thank you. So, join us again next time, this same time siguro on tomorrow ba yun?
Tomorrow.
We'll see you again tomorrow only
Yes.
here on Teach Psych PAP SIGTV. Ang haba na nung sinabi ko. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Miss Yo. Thank you, Abby.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Miss Monique. Thank you, Doc Ver.
Bye.